Good morning and welcome back to Planner Craft. I'm Natalie and today we're going to be going Dotty. So, I'll just wait for a few more people to join us and hopefully for my iPad to play a game. Come on. We'll get there eventually. Okay. Just load that up so I can see comments. Hopefully. So, have you all had a good weekend? And morning, Thea. I think my iPad's going to be annoying today. So, I will just watch on here. So, there's going to be a little bit of time when I won't be able to see comments, just when I'm flicking across to the display. Good morning, Deb. Good morning, Linda. And good morning, Tracy, who's coming up as Planner Craft at the moment. Okay. So today we are going for a Dotty card. So if I just very quickly pop over to canvas and let's pop you on display. So here are the pieces we're going to be working with. And I'll just shrink those up so that you can see kind of what's going on. So we have all the pieces of our card up to this point. Then we've got a little card preview just here. So what I'll do is if I hide these for a moment, and you will have access to this file after we've been live, and put the card preview up, we're going to be doing something that looks like this. So, with that in mind, let's get started. So I'm just going to flick back overhead for a moment just so I can pull comments back up. That's okay, Thea, pop out if you need to. And we'll see you on Friday. So you're going to need some double-sided tape. You're going to need a pen holder of some variety. And good morning, Maggie. You're going to need a 6x6 card blank. So you may find if you buy them pre-made that they're slightly off, but our design should fit because we've gone for something that's about 5.5 by the time we're finished. You're going to need lots of different colours of card. So if I fan these out just a little bit better so you can see the ones underneath as well. So for the pieces that I've done in canvas, I'm going to be using these colours here. And I've already cut the pieces that I need so that I can just show you how to lay those out on the mat. Then for the top three, so these ones here, we are going to be using the inbuilt shapes. So let's pop these to one side and I can work with my cut pieces first. So before I go too far, are there any questions that you may have had from the last class? Now's a good time to ask. If you missed the last class, do go back, and the file for that is up on the group as well. So that's Scan, Cut and Paper Craft Courses, Classes and Workshops by Planner Craft. And there you go, Tracy, you're coming up as you now. So I'm going to switch over to the close cam. So I've already sent my file, so I can go to Retrieve Data. I'm going to go to Wi-Fi. And we've pulled in all our bits. Now everything that needs to be grouped should be grouped, fingers crossed. So let's get our mat. And this is the benefit of having two cameras on one screen. Don't have to flick too much. I'm just going to set my card blank to one side. And I'm going to do this roughly by what we already have on a mat, but we are going to end up moving some things. So up into this top left corner, I'm going to add our first piece of card, which is going to be our background piece. Then we have rectangle top, right? So that can go in there. So that's going to have one set of dots from it. And good morning, Carol. So yes, you've got another fun one that you can play with this time. So whereas last time we provided the text as text, this time you're going to find that you can just take out the whole word and start again. So I have a bit of sort of an orangey yellow for the centre of my flower, as it will be. I have a pink strip for my border strip, so I'm going to pop that. Let's go sort of there-ish, because you still want to keep it within your 12 by 12, even though I'm working with the Artistic Super Duo, which actually has a wider sticky area. And let's move that down just a touch, because that could go in there. So I can pop that one straight under there. And sometimes you can find you end up doing a little bit of a rejig, but we should be okay at that. And just make sure that everything is pressed down well. Now all of these cardstocks are roughly the same thickness, so therefore you shouldn't have to worry about the blade going too deep. If you are cutting anything that is significantly thinner and you know it's going to cut a card piece first, then cut that separately. Don't try and do it all in one go, otherwise you could potentially cut through your mat. But if it's going to start off with paper and then do the card bits, what you can find is sometimes it doesn't go all the way through the card, so you may need to just run just those card items through again. And thank you very much, Tracy. So with that now on our mat, we can load that into our machine. Fingers crossed that it behaves today. Come on, you know you want to. Didn't I just know you're going to behave today? So if it misbehaves, there's an nail file. And I'm just going to file this edge through. And you just want to make sure that that feels nice and smooth. And same on this side. Usually you'll find it's this top corner here that will go. But I'm just going to do both sides. And usually you can kind of feel it. So if I just run my nail across it, it's still catching just a little. There we go. And there we go. Okay, so with that now loaded in our machine, what we need to do is do a background scan. So this icon just here with the blue page and the scan bar going across it, that's the one we need to do. It's going to go through the machine and then back through. So you do want to support your mat a little. And there's our scan. So I'm not sure if I'm seeing comments from YouTube, they don't seem to be popping up. So if I'm missing your comments on YouTube, I do apologise, I will go back and check after. So in this top left we've got our background piece. We might just move that in slightly from that edge. But first of all, let's move the bits that definitely need moving. So for starters, our border strip just here is going to go onto this pink. So this type of design is really good for doing your using up your offcuts. So I'm just going to pop that one there in the middle. Going to do the same here. And it might be that we end up using a little bit more of this one, so I don't mind that it's a bit longer. I'm just going to use my little move buttons just so I can control that a little bit better. Okay, there we go. Okay, now my bloom, I'm going to move on to the white. As I said, we can move our Dotty panel just in a bit there, and the background panel just into the middle, that one. Okay, now if you're struggling to see, what you can do is, if we go OK, I'm just going to go to my settings, and it gives you two options for your scan. So if we press on that one, it's going to lighten that scan up, so you can see your actual images that you're going to be cutting a lot clearer. So this is useful if you're working black on black, obviously, but also sometimes you'll find that some of the brighter colours can actually kind of make you lose your way. Also, if you're working with patterned paper as well, it's again a function that can be using a lot. So with that all in place, we can go OK, and our scan's going to disappear, but don't panic, it's still there, believe it or not. And we have one element that's going to draw, and everything else is going to cut. So as a rule of thumb, typically I will do my draw first. So sitting in my little tray, I have some Arteza white gel pens. So these come in 3 different thicknesses. So you've got 0.6, 0.8 and a 1.0. Now because we're going to be working with text that is single line, I'm going to be going for the 1.0, so this is going to give quite a bold finish to the text. If you think that your text is too small to handle it, don't be afraid to go down to that 0.8. So, I'm going to unscrew the top, but you don't take it off entirely. Pop it in, and we're going to push it all the way down to the bottom. Tighten up the screw thread. Give it a little wiggle, so we're making sure that that pen is down into that guide properly. And if you have a little bit of scrap paper, then what I would recommend you doing is just activating that, just so that it kind of gets flowing. So I'm just going to use a little bit of scrap paper just there, just to get that activated. On the back of your pen holder, you have 2 little lines. That's to indicate that that's the back, and those go to the back of your pen holder, well, to the couch. So that's going to pop in there, and we can lower the lever. So it's the lever that's going to lock that holder in place, and we can then adjust any settings that we need to. So when we're using a gel pen, depending on how new it is, sometimes if it's a particularly older pen, you're going to be wanting to go nice and slow. If it's a newer pen, you might want to go a little bit quicker. Is there one of those universal pen holders for the Cricut Joy, do you know? If Michelle is watching, Michelle might be able to tell you that one, Tracy. I know that there's one, I believe, for the Maker. I'm not sure about the Joy. So I would definitely reach out to Michelle. Okay, so for this particular pen, draw speed 1 is fine, draw pressure -2 is also fine. I'm going to go OK and start. It's going to come up with a little error message saying attach appropriate holder. We just go OK and start again. I believe they also are looking at starting international ordering in the near future. as well. So if you do want to order a universal pen holder from 3D Fun Prints, if you go on their Facebook page and drop them a message, they'll be able to get you sorted. There's also one for silhouette as well, which I should have said. So the Cameo 4, there's one already out. I think the 3 may be on the way. Okay, so with the text done, we can swap over blades. So I'm just going to pop my holder out of there. Now, in terms of which blade to use, you have a couple of choices. So, if I put those there, we have the standard black auto blade. So this one is the one that comes with the machine, works for most of the cutting. What I would say it's not so good at is if it's really detailed. Now, obviously, as we're doing all these dotty backgrounds, if we wanted to keep all the dots, number one, yeah, I think you'd be slightly mad, but if you wanted to keep all the dots, I wouldn't recommend using the standard cut blade. I would recommend switching to the vinyl blade, which is the pale blue topped blade. It's just that much better for detail. But because we're not keeping the dots, chances are you can get away with just your standard blade. So given that that's what I know that most people have, that's what I'll cut it with today. So I'm going to pop that into my machine. I'm going to go OK. I'm going to go to cut. And we can see that all our shapes are now ready to go and our text has vanished that we just drew. So we want to be checking when we're doing this that the right things are disappearing for the right tools. And then we can go OK. Pressure -9, yes that's right because I've got my standard auto blade in. Speed 1, now you'll notice at the moment it says it's going to take 28 minutes, which could be a bit boring for you all. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop it up 1 notch to 2 and go OK. It's going to shorten it slightly, so it's going to take it down to 21 minutes, but I'm going to show you a little bit about the dots and what the difference is between the pieces. So let's go start on that one. And I'm going to grab the mouse just so I can show you how things work. So I'm just going to switch over to canvas and onto display. Now, while I'm doing this bit, I can't see comments, I do apologise, but I will answer any questions that you pop up when I go back to the other view. So, you can see in the little layer bar here that I have 2 different dots. I have the canvas dots and the affinity dots, so I'm just going to hide the preview and I'm just going to put these 2 back on just so I can talk about the differences. Now, canvas, you can do a dot patterning like this, and it's all done manually, and don't panic, it's not difficult to do. But what I would say is, if you are doing it to a shape, then stick around and I'll show you the other way of doing it. So, because we're just in a square or a rectangle, then you can use the dots within canvas to do this. So all you do to do that is you're going to start off with a circle. So I'm just going to go into basic shapes, add to a circle, and that's going to pop it on my map. Now each of these dots is 2 mil. And it's going to go tiny. Now what I would say at this point is just move it so it's away from that red line. Okay. Now if we go into our layers panel, rather than us trying to drag a copy and put it in a lovely straight line, we can make the computer do the hard work for us. So down the bottom of the layers panel you've got the little duplicate button. And if we keep doing that, it's going to give you a duplicate that's always appearing at the same distance in a lovely straight line. Okay. So then we can select that line and we can group it so that it's going to be all one shape. So that's Command and G or Control and G. And that's going to group it all together. Then we can do the same again, so this time we'll duplicate the group. And it's going to pop it the same distance. You're going to think, oh, it's only added an extra, dot on the end. What's these for? You're going to take that group and we're going to shift and select the previous group. We can go to Edit, down to Align, and we're going to align it to the top. Nice and simple. So you can see that straight away we're starting to have a dot pattern. Okay? And you're going to do that duplicate across. So now, this time, we're going to select both. Duplicate is going to pop it down in that same line again. And now we can select all of those. And we're going to align the top. Now, it's going to look like you've only got 3 lines. That's because you've got a duplicate in this middle one. So you have a couple of choices. You can either move those 2 duplicates across. You can just delete the one that's overlapping. And you can keep going till you've got enough for a shape. Now obviously you want that pattern to be larger than the shape that you want to put it on. So for instance, let's pick a square. And size it down, just because it's tiny. Now if you move that square into the middle, you want it so that your pattern goes all the way across, so that your last line goes through this corner here, and the first line goes through this corner here. You can then ungroup everything and just delete the circles that you aren't using. That's how I did my rectangle. Now that process is brilliant for straight shapes. So if you're working with a square, a rectangle, and sometimes depending on how your dots are laid out, you can get away with things like octagons, where you've got a 45 degree, or triangles are a little bit more tricky. However, if we try and do that in a circle, you're going to end up with dots that are going to be round and potentially cutting into the outside cut edge. So what do we do then? Well, because you can't weld non-overlapping shapes in canvas, we have to think outside the box a little. So if I go back to my layers, and hidden away, I have this little infinity dot pattern. Now if I make that visible, so probably sends your eyes a bit dotty, but basically that is all one shape, and that means that we can use it with a cookie cutter. So for instance, a circle, it could be a pattern shape such as a flower or something else that's in your machine, and then you can actually fill that shape with that pattern. And all you need to do is just overlay your shape. So let's go for a circle. Make it slightly smaller just so it's within that pattern. We can move that shape around to get the pattern where we want it to. And then what you would do is you go to your process overlap down here, and you use divide. Okay, so not remove overlap, because otherwise all you'll do is take the dots out of the centre. So that can have other uses in terms of if you want to do like a panel. But to fill the shape that you have on top at the moment, you're going to use divide. And then you're going to find that those centre dots are going to go to hollow circles. And those are the ones that you kind of want to keep. Now, what I would say is when I was doing this earlier, it does take a little bit of time. So, how long have we got? Oh, we've got 40 minutes yet. So, you select both the cutter shape and the pattern. We are going to go to divide, and it's going to think about it a lot. But what it is essentially doing is where those dots are within our circle, it's going to punch those dots through that circle as well as keeping the dots behind the circle. And round the outside, it's just going to essentially use that circle to just cut those ones round the middle. Now, the reason that I say you want to make sure that pattern's bigger than your shape is when you are working in Affinity to create this pattern in the first place, what you're using is a dashed line. So I've shown you a few times on how to do like a dash with circles. So that's a dash pattern of 0 and 3 for this particular one, with a 2mm stroke. Now, when you do your line, what you'll find is your start and end dots aren't always perfect circles. So that's where you actually want to create more of a pattern than you know you're going to need. So if you're doing your own design from scratch and you know you need a circle of a fixed amount, then you are going to want to do those lines about 2 to 3mm wider. As I said, it does take a little bit of time. So while that is thinking, let's hop back to the Streamlabs and follow over the top, just so I can see any comments. Okay. So if you have any questions about the dots, then do ask now. So just to repeat the settings for Affinity, it's a stroke of 2mm with a dash pattern of 0 and 3. And then once you've done that, you are going to expand the stroke in the layers panel, just so that you are essentially turning it from having this straight line to it going, okay, I need to cut around each of those dots. Then once you've done that, you're going to weld all of those dots together. So then you have a pattern that you can use. Because Affinity has the ability to actually weld non-overlapping shapes, and that's one of the reasons why I do think it is such a useful program. Even Illustrator struggles with that one on occasion. So, any questions? Let's see if Canvas has sorted itself out yet. Doesn't look like it just yet. I'll give it a bit of time. I'll get there eventually. So the file that will be going up on the group will have a copy of that pattern. It has that little preview group that I showed you where it shows you how to lay out the card, as well as all the pieces that you need, apart from any that I use at the machine. So the plan is for the next part that we're going to use some of the designs that are in the machine to build a little bit of foliage, a few petals, and then also show you about cropping as well. Don't be afraid to ask questions if you have any. There's no such thing as a daft question. all the cardstock I'm using in terms of the coloured cardstock is by American Crafts. The white cardstock is actually a white shimmer card. Let me just remind, when you want to change a lot of cut layers to draw, how do you select all? I did select first one shift, select last, and it didn't work. That is unusual. What I would say is make sure that when you're doing that process of select first one, then shift and select last one, make sure you're not accidentally clicking within a group. Because I've been doing that lots this morning, so it should work like that. But if you try and do it within a group, sometimes it will throw up an issue. The other thing to check also is that the layer isn't locked, because if the layer is locked, that means even if you select above and below it, it just won't select that one in the middle. Because it's locked. So if you look at the layers palette, there we go. We are back. Let's go back to display. So we go to the layers palette. This little box here, which is currently blank, is basically where you have the padlock icon if the layer is locked. So going back to the dots, I wanted to fill that circle with just those dots. I'm going to just click on that top shape. It's going to take a little bit of time to think about it. And we can delete that top shape. Then all those black circles, we're going to delete those too, and that gives you your pattern shape in the middle. So if you note in this middle area here, our pattern crops slightly smaller, so I just use offset to actually create a number of layers just based on one circle. So I'm just going to delete that top layer out, and then you'll be able to see those dots left behind. But one of the things you really have to do with canvas when you're working with this pattern is just be patient, because it does take time. And occasionally it does crash. So save regularly. Just saves your sanity, because it even crashed on me earlier. So now we can see that we've got our hollow dots, which are the ones that we want to keep, and the black dots that we want to get rid of. So if we scroll down in our panel here, and again, it can take a little time, so just be patient with it. Just going to drag it down manually and let go of it. And it should eventually start going down, as I said, because it's quite a complex file because of that dot pattern, and also masking it to screen at the same time. It's going to give it a little bit of the harder time of it. So I scroll down, 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 down. You can see that suddenly those circles go black. So you want to find that top black one and select it. Then we're going to scroll down, 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 down to the bottom one. Okay, just here. We're going to press and hold shift and select, and they should all turn blue. And it's going to think about it, because it's then going to highlight them all on the page, like so. And then hit backspace. Now this is usually where it crashes. It has to get rid of quite a lot of information. So if you think about each shape is a line in a piece of code, we've selected about probably 50 of them. So it's then having to find each of those shapes, and they may not necessarily be in a block. So it's just having to rewrite that program that's sitting behind the scenes. Like so. You then have your shape, and what I would suggest you do next, before you do anything else, select all those items, like so. And then you're going to go Command and G or Control and G to group them. Now, misbehaved on the bloom, so I will redo that in a minute. But let's get out of those bits that we do need. So, I'm going to flick back to the overhead. And hopefully while that's thinking about it, I can switch back to Streamlabs. And that's fine there. And we can take the pieces off our mat. So I'm going to go OK. Unload. Now my bloom didn't work just because it shifted slightly on the mat. But let's go for that. No, it didn't like that one, did it? No, it did not. That's okay, we can sort that. Now the other pattern that we've got on our pieces is a little dash pattern. So let's see if I can get the camera to pick that up. So you can see it's like a little stitch pattern, and that's done the same way as you create your dot pattern in Affinity, but instead of using a round dot in Canvas, you're going to set it up as a long but close gap dash, if that makes sense. So let's get all these pieces off. Now to clean your mat, because you will need to, just going to get my lint roller and we can take those pieces off our mat. When you find you stop getting any new pieces off, just change your strip on your roller. Now when you're using a fresh piece, you just want to take a little extra care that you don't kind of weld it to your mat. So I tend to just go for little kind of rocking motions, just so that I don't accidentally stick the roll to the mat. Okay. So with that done, let's decide on which colour I'm going to go for next. So with those pieces, I think I'm going to go for, let's go for the purple first. And line that up onto my mat. And this is where we're going to start using the shapes that are in our machine. So one thing I would say, if you've just got a scan and cut, is don't underestimate what your machine is capable of doing without even touching the computer. There are some things it can't do, like it can't subtract in the machine, but then you can just send things through to Canvas instead. So both of them there. I'm going to press the home button. That's going to remove everything, and let's load in my mat. Then I can change view. Okay. Let's go to close cam. So this time I'm going to go to pattern. I'm going to go to the designs. I'm going to go to the nature, and I want a flower. But which one? The single colour ones tend to be the easiest for the kind of design that I have in mind. And obviously because we've done that centre circle, we don't want anything that's got too big a centre circle. So let's go for that one. And we know our card front is about 5 inches. So if we go for 5 inches, that means from there to there's about 2.5. I'm going to go OK. OK again. And set. So there's our flower onto our mat. Now obviously at this point we haven't got the shape on the mat to actually give us a sense of size. So What I would recommend doing at this point is either having a gridded cutting mat on your desk or have a ruler handy that you can actually measure things and try and get them into some sort of perspective. So if I look on my cutting mat here, I've got a little section that kind of maps out a 12 by 12 or a 10 by 10. So I can actually use that to kind of measure roughly where my flower centre would be, so it's just shy of 2 inches, and then how big I want that flower to sit on my background. So if I've got my little border piece like that, I'm going to pop that down to that. Oh, actually, let's make life a little easier. Just because it didn't quite get through where I wanted it to. Just on an edge. And sometimes it'll be like that, especially if you've done something where you've cut lots of dots. It just means there's a little bit of debris in your blade that needs cleaning out, which I will do off stream in a bit. Let's cut that one down. Okay. Just tidy that up. Okay. So that one's going to go there. Like so. I'm going to use the bigger circle as a guide for this one because the detail on the other one doesn't matter just yet. Okay. So there's where my circle's going to go. So I want my flower to be kind of like that. So if we bear in mind roughly where those petals would go if we use the whole flower, you're going to be looking at about 4 inches up to the edge, another 2 inches underneath, so that's going to be 6 inches. So we need to take that flower just a little bit bigger. So if we go to Edit, Object Edit, Resize, we can take that up to 6 inches. Now, am I bothered that I'm not going to use a whole of that flower? No, I'm not. Okay. So we can just go OK. Now, if you still had your card preview on your mat, you could then go to the trouble of actually cropping into it and things. But you still have to have that whole flower on the mat, which is why I said I'm not going to be that bothered about trying to get that crop exact on the mat just at this point. If you want to see one where we actually do the crop, there's one that Ian did last year where we actually took this flower and we cropped into it. So I'm going to go OK, OK, and I'm going to cut that again. What I am going to do, just because I know my blade is probably going to need a little bit of TLC, I'm going to swap to my vinyl blade, but that is only because I know that I need to clean out my blade holder. So I'm going to go to cut. Remember to change your pressure if you need to. So I'm going to go to -6 because I've swapped blade. And I can go. Sorry, Carol, your reply didn't come through to the other chat window, but if I flip backwards and forwards, I can sometimes get the reply. So yes, thank you, Carol, for saying you're replying to Tracy as well, because I hadn't seen that one. So when you are doing measurements, what you need to remember is those sizes relate to bounding box, as we call it, which is like the outside square rather than the actual shape itself. So sometimes you do find that you do get a few issues with actual spacing. when you're sizing stuff. So if you need to do anything ultra precise, then do take it into canvas and just double check. Okay, so that's my first flower done. I'm just going to grab myself a little metal spatula to get that off the mat. There we go. So the whole idea is the flower centre is going to sit in the centre, like so. And I'm going to put that so that we can still see our border nice and clearly with our text. So you want to kind of rotate that flower to suit you, because this isn't fixed yet. So I think around about there. Then all you're going to do is, once you stuck it down, is just trim that up. Okay. So let's very quickly get these dots out. You will find that some of them stay stuck in there, but most of them should just easily just rub out between your finger and thumb. And I will be dusting later. Okay. You also want to kind of decide which is going to be your front and which is going to be your back, so that popping things through front to back. So sometimes it's a good idea to cut from the back to the front, just for a neater cut. But for other things, like textured cardstock, you just as well to cut from the front. Okay. So because I'm going to be kind of popping that in there, I don't want to spend too long on string popping all those little circles out. So now I'm thinking that as we've got this one lined up, I also want to do a different colour as well. So with the same file on my mat, I'm going to switch colour card. So I'm going to go to a nice warm lighter pink than my border. Pop that straight onto my cutting mat. And we can go again. So we'll go OK, please select cut, and cut another one. Circle. Decorate the floor in confetti. Ian will love me later. And let's just pop these bits through. Now, if you have a blending mat to hand, what you can do is just use a little bit of ink blending just to tone the edges of these cut shapes, and you'll just find that just gives a really nice pop of depth to your piece. If you have a little dye brush, you can also use that for poking at these tiny little bits, because they are tiny, and you'll find it much quicker to do it that way than with a pokey tool like I'm doing it. There we go. Let's do a quick trim if you've got any bits that are not quite cut through around the outside, but my poor blade is definitely going to be in need of some TLC. I did pull out a like a tealy green piece as well that I thought I could use with some foliage, but I just think with the other bits of the card that might be just a little bit too busy. So I'm thinking if I put the pink one where the purple one is and then maybe rotate our purple one round a bit and pop it underneath, would be cool. So and pop that one like that, and that one like that. So in terms of assembly, what I would recommend doing is just concentrating on your two flowers and your border. Then when you actually come to do the background piece, you're going to line it up with that border edge so that you try and get everything square. Then you can trim it down. Okay. So I'm going to start off with my pink piece first. A little bit double-sided. You don't need to use a lot at this stage because we've obviously got a lot more sticking to do. So I'm just going to pop a bit just in the middle there. And we know that we're aiming to go sort of between two petals here. And if the border comes back out the other side, that's fine because we've only done a little piece. So let me just pop that back overhead. There we go. So there's our one flower. I'm going to flick that over now. So a bit onto our pink and a bit onto the strip. So now we can be a bit more free flowing with where this one's going to go. I'm going to aim for roughly between each petal. There's going to be a pop of purple so that you have something that now looks like that. Now for this next bit. So I want to go and pop this. So this is level here. And what you can do to help you is if you have a nice tea ruler, like I do, we can pop that up against the edge of our background and we can use that to make sure that we get our border in line. Now when it comes to what to use to glue this with, rather than tape, because you want that wiggle room, you're going to use a little bit wet glue. Now whichever glue is what you find comfortable to work with is the one that you're going to go with. So, for me at the moment, that's this one. And where your tag bit is sticking out, that's telling you that you need to glue in that area there. So, there we go. Just going to do a little tiny bit of glue. You don't want to go mad. Like so. And anything that needs a little extra glue once we've done our background, then we can do that when nothing else is stuck. So make sure you have your background the right way up. And I'm just going to slide this underneath my ruler. Work out roughly where I want to put it. And like so. Get that level-ish. This is why we only use little bits of glue, just to make sure that we get everything in the right place. Okay. Now because our little tag here is only stuck with that first bit of tape, we just need to go through and pop a little bit of glue underneath. And I've forgotten my background. Again, that's why we've got the wonders of wet glue. So I'm just going to lift this up and slide that in underneath, like so. Now push that down just a little. Just want it to just go in there, like so. Get it straight. And again, there's no glue on that at this moment, so I'm just going to pop glue onto the back of the background piece in a few places. So you want to particularly pay attention to any corners, like so. And this is one of those designs where it doesn't look like you've got a whole lot until you actually do the trim, and then it's like, oh right, yeah, I can see where it's going now. So if you want to trim it with a scalpel and ruler, that's fine. If you want to do it with your trimmer, that's fine. So I'm just going to go and hopefully we can get through all this in one shot. There we go. And again on this one. So you want to line it up so that it's more or less in the middle. And all these pieces that I'm cutting off you could still use as a pattern for something else. And just to create the funky background with. So no waste if you don't want there to be. So there's our trimmed piece. Now, as I said, my bloom didn't work earlier because my card shifted, so what I will do is I will recut that off stream so that you can see that all finished. There's my little centre. So looking good so far. It's very quiet out there today. I'm just not sure if I'm getting half the comments. I've tried changing views and things, but let's just push those through. Just want to make sure those stay out of the way. Okay. There. There's always one that awkward. So with this particular piece, I'm thinking it would be quite good if it was up 3D'd, but obviously being kind of dotty like that can be a little bit fiddly to do. So what I'd recommend doing is I have here some little 3D squares. Now these squares are a bit unusual in that they have a little border between each square. So we can use those to cut things that, well, to mount things that are a little bit more fiddly. So let's pop that into the back of my little flower head. I'm going to cut these ones here too. If anybody needs to know a link for these, do let me know and I'll pop it up in the group later. They're not very expensive, and they come in a pack with both circles and squares. It's going to stick to me rather than the card. Come on. There we go. Let's get the next one. But no, the inspiration for today just came from showing you the difference between Affinity and Canvas and what the two can do together. Definitely going to stick to me today. I must have a magnetic personality. There we go. So whenever I do anything with 3D foam, I'm just going to check that that's all taken where it should. which that one isn't, so let's just get that middle one right. And then we need to peel off all these little tiny backings. Now if you want to 3D mount the bottom circle, obviously that one you can use foam tape. You could cut a piece of craft foam on your machine, which if you look at my recent silhouette blog for the new year, you'll see that I've done that on there. Okay. There's a bit of paper stuck on there. There we go. Just make sure they've all removed those bits. So I'm going to work onto my black cutting mat just so I can see my edge nice and clearly. So again, all these edges that we have around here, you could use your ink blending on. That's okay, you'll all concentrate away. Hopefully you're all making notes as well. Because a lot of the principles that I use in this card you can kind of use for most other projects. In terms of how I did the dots and things. There we go. So it's then only the bloom left to go. Pop that on there. So the bloom is going to go across here. And as I said, I will cut that again off stream just so you can see that when I pop that all onto card base. Now, let's get my card base in. Mounting in, if it's pre-scored, you can sometimes find that not always quite true, so you can always use a bone folder just to reinforce that fold. If you look along this edge here, so the edge opposite you fold, you should see that there's like a little lip. The longest piece is the front of your card. Okay, so now I can pop my glue or my tape, whichever you want to work with. I think I'm going to go tape. Just because we've got all those little cut lines, and you don't really want glue squidging through. If you're working with a thicker glue, obviously that won't be an issue, but with this, with the mono, it's a little bit more watery than say the Sticks 2. But I'm running out, can you believe? I need to do an order again. So Sticks 2 is having to be saved for samples and things. So there's a few shows coming up in February that you'll be able to see my samples on. So hence I've had to take a bit of a step back from streaming just because lots of deadlines going on, and I also want to get the new book out. Target is the end of the month, and ideally before then. So I just have a few last photographs to take where I need to actually put projects into a physical reality, shall I say, because everything is done digitally now, and so it's just those last few actual physical projects to do. I'm going to pop that on there, get it nice and centered. There we go. And if you need to apply any glue, now's the time to do it. So I'm just going to pop a little bit under this petal there. Again, a little bit just there, a little bit there, a bit there. That's going to hold that petal. I'm going to pop a little bit under the top edge of that petal there. And that one's pretty stuck. And again, just a little bit there for that one. So in the file, well, I think that's it. The bloom is made with a font called Chocolate Sprinkles. So if you want to change the text on that one, you're going to probably want to get that font. I believe it is now a paid one. It was free when I got it, but they don't always stay free. And the text here is using our font, which is Child's Play. So there you go. So I'll very quickly off stream cut the bloom and put that on so that you can see that in situ, and I'll pop up a finished photo. The file should be available early this afternoon so that you can have a play, and I look forward to seeing what you create with it. So take care for now. I will be back on Friday, and this time I'm going to be doing something stamping. So watch this space. There will almost certainly be a chocolate block stamp in there. And I look forward to seeing you then. So that's Friday, 11 AM UK time. Take care and thank you for watching. Bye.